So tell me a little bit about the single, Save Myself. Tell me a little bit about kind of like the background of it and I don't know, maybe the story that you have about it.
Well, basically how it was written. So I got into a room with two guys called John Miggs and John Luzzy. And we had been chatting kind of previously before we got into the studio and just kind of texting back and forth, talking about kind of like what we were wanting to write about and where we were wanting to go. And I sent them some ideas for some poetry that I had written. So I just kind of sent it through a text message, let them kind of chew on it for a little bit. Mm-hmm. They had chatted with me about kind of like song direction and to give them some examples of some songs. So I gave them the examples of like the direction that I was wanting to go and the stuff that I felt connected to. Cold was one of them actually. And then another one was it Sometimes by HER? And then some Adele stuff. So just kind of like trying to find a fusion between those kinds of vibes, right? Because those very much my feel and my those are my jams. And I'm like, if I'm going to sing this for the rest of my life on stages, I want to really like feel it.
And your voice definitely fits that style for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Then hey, quit it. Sorry.
No, you're totally
funny
fine.
Farm over here. So then as far as the lyrics and the content went, we took some of that poetic stuff that I had sent them. And once we got into the studio, we talked about kind of like some things that I wanted to say. And I really wanted to convey some stuff that I had been through in the last year. When I went through that spiral downward, I ended up in a relationship that was so fast, it probably shouldn't even be called a relationship. It was a situationship, but it was one of those things that
situationship. I love that.
It was one of those things that like I fell really fast. And the reason I fell really fast is because I was in a place where I was living in my parents' basement at 40 years old. I wasn't working. I had lost my sense of identity. And this person came along and was like, you've done all these crazy cool things and you've lived, like I was back in my hometown. He's like, you've lived in the United States and you've lived in Nashville and you've done all this great stuff. And I was like, all of a sudden, like this popular Nashville girl again. And and we made really quick plans. I had known him for a really long time and we made really quick plans to kind of like be together. And those fell apart as quickly as they got started. And a big part of that was because I put all of my happiness on that relationship and on him and not looking for it within myself. And so it imploded. And of course, like anytime you do that, it's going to, if you don't have your own legs to stand on, how do you expect to be on stand on someone else's, you know? And so that kind of made me spiral even more. And when I finally kind of got through the pain and the hurt of that, I realized that like, there's a line in the song and it goes, you didn't save me because I couldn't save myself. And then I broke my heart myself because I put so many expectations on that. And then there's how could you love me when I didn't love me? There's a few lines that are like, those are the specific lines in the songs, but that's so true. How can we expect somebody to love us when we don't have love in our hearts for ourselves? Right. And so when I was chatting with the guys about that, we just kind of like, they're just typing away as I'm kind of spewing out everything I went through. Yeah. And we just kind of cut and pasted all together through some of the poetry parts in there. And Bob's your uncle. That's kind of how the song was born.
And Bob's your uncle. See, because that's what I was curious about. Because when we started talking and you were talking about that spiral, I was referencing back to the song and I was like, wait, it's called Save Myself. And I was like, I'd imagine that this was during her darkest moment.
Yep.
That this whole thing, because as I was listening to it, the song definitely doesn't sound like the vibes of the song definitely don't sound nearly as melancholy as what the lyrics are.
Yeah.
But when I was listening to it and then I thought back to it while you were talking, it did feel like a very introspective, like I need to figure everything out is what it felt like. And so it's really cool to hear that story. And when you were putting these pieces of poetry, were these like multiple poems that you had written that you kind of pieced together, or how is that?
No, one was specific. It was just one big specific chunk of like So I kind of, when I do lyric ideas, I kind of I do like little chunks here and there.
Okay.
And so this one was kind of like a big long piece of like what I wanted to say. I'm also like very into the moon and like the full moons and following lunar phases and astrology and all of that kind of stuff. And I really wanted to kind of put some of that part of myself into the music as well, because it's very much a part of my brand. It's who I am. I'm up doing my morning meditations every day, and I've got my meditation music on, and I'm burning my sage and my incense. And that's a big part of my things that I do for myself that keeps my mental sanity. And I really wanted to include that in my music somehow, because I grew up really, really Christian and used to be a Pentecostal worship leader. And so a lot of music I did was very God-centered. And I kind of wanted to keep it that way, but also I have a different type of relationship with God now, because it's much more spiritual and not so religious. And so I wanted to kind of, I know a lot of people that have been in my situation where we've grown up in church, and now we're kind of finding our own path, so to speak. And so I wanted to really incorporate that so that there's some inclusion there for that kind of a thing. It's authentic to who I am. And I know that it's authentic to some others too. And I know that it'll resonate with people and maybe, again, bring some healing and help people kind of realize that you don't have to be in a church to know God, and that God is without and within, and all of those kinds of things. I wanted to incorporate all of that stuff in the song as well as my journey. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the big problems in the world is people feel like they can discount God and write him off. And I'm like, man, you got to just remember, like, God isn't the religion, like the church you're going to. It's not the people at the church particularly. Like, the people at that church are far from being there, right? It's like, and I'm constantly trying to like think that through. It's like, no, I need to have God within me, right? Like, I need to have that. So I love that. That's really cool that you incorporated that.